Captain Reyes slammed the emergency override on the bridge console, his fingers slick with sweat as the alien ship's hull groaned under the strain of the incoming barrage. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat across the cramped command deck of the UNS Vanguard. "Evasive pattern Delta now," he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. Beside him, Lieutenant Kara Voss gripped the navigation yoke, her knuckles white, eyes locked on the holographic display where a swarm of jagged, insectoid fighters, designated as the Krix Vanguard, swarmed like angry hornets toward their position. The Vanguard shuddered as a plasma bolt grazed the shields, sparks flying from an overhead panel. Voss twisted the ship into a barrel roll, the inertial dampeners whining in protest. "Shields at 60%, Captain. They're locking onto our engines. Another hit like that and we're done." Her tone was steady, laced with the quiet grit that had earned her the spot at Reyes's side. Across from them, Engineer Thomas Hale hunched over his toolkit, rerouting power with frantic efficiency. "Give me 30 seconds, Hale muttered, his wiry frame tense, tools dancing in his hands. "I can boost the deflectors if you buy me the time." Reyes nodded, his jaw set in determination. The Krix invasion had caught humanity off guard 3 weeks ago, their fleets pouring through the wormhole like a biblical plague. Sequence Alpha, they called it, in intercepted transmissions. Total subjugation. But the Vanguard was no sitting duck. It was humanity's first line of defiance, a retrofitted hauler-turned-warship, crewed by the stubborn few who refused to kneel. "Fire countermeasures," Reyes ordered, watching as the point defense turret spat chaff into the void, buying precious moments. The lead Krix fighter exploded in a silent bloom of debris, Voss's maneuver threading the needle through the swarm. But the respite was brief. Another wave closed in, their chitinous hulls glinting under the stars. Hale slammed his panel shut. Deflectors hot, reroute complete. The shields flared brighter, absorbing the next volley with a resonant hum that vibrated through the deck plates. Reyes allowed himself a grim smile. "Good work. Plot a course for the asteroid field. Let's see how these bugs handle a game of hide-and-seek." Voss complied, the ship lurching toward the tumbling rocks, where shadows promised cover and traps for the unwary. But deep down he knew this was just the opening salvo. The real fight was planetside, where the Krix were already carving footholds into Earth's colonies. The Vanguard had to hold the line or there'd be no home to return to. The asteroid field loomed ahead like a graveyard of shattered worlds, jagged rocks tumbling in lazy orbits that hid 1,000 ambush points. Hale gripped the console, his knuckles whitening as the Vanguard wove through the debris. Engines thrumming with controlled fury, Voss's hands danced over the controls, plotting a serpentine path that dodged a house-sized boulder by mere meters. "Contact, 3 Krix scouts on our tail," Reyes barked from the command chair, his voice cutting through the alert klaxons. The view screen flickered, highlighting the insectoid ships. Sleek, barbed vessels that darted with unnatural precision, their plasma lances already charging with a sickly green glow.
"Evade left, full burn,"
Hale shouted, slamming the auxiliary thrusters online. The ship bucked, inertial dampeners straining as it slipped behind a spinning fragment of ice-laced stone. The Krix fired anyway, their shots carving molten scars across the rock, fragments exploding outward in a deadly hail. Reyes leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the tactical overlay. "They're hurting us, trying to flush us into open space." Voss tightened that weave. "Hale, get me options on those rocks. We turn this field into their coffin." Voss nodded grimly, sweat beading on her brow despite the chill of recycled air. "Copy. Slingshotting around that cluster. Gonna use their momentum against them." The Vanguard surged, gravity wells from the larger asteroids yanking at its hull like invisible hands. One Krix scout misjudged the pull, smashing into a rogue chunk with a silent bloom of debris. Its wreckage spun away, trailing ionized gas. But the other 2 adapted fast, their formations tightening like a predator's jaws. A lance grazed the shield, sending sparks dancing across the bridge. Hale cursed under his breath, rerouting power from life support to reinforce the aft emitters. The air grew stuffy, recyclers whining in protest. "Shields at 60%, he reported, voice steady but edged with strain. "We can't take another hit like that." Reyes drummed his fingers on the armrest, mind racing. Planetside, the colonies were burning, reports filtering in of Krix burrowing into the Earth, their swarms overwhelming automated defenses. Up here they were the thin blue line, buying time with blood and ingenuity. Asteroids have weak points, cracks from old impacts. "Hale, can we detonate one?" Turn the field against them? Hale's eyes lit up, the cautious engineer surfacing with a spark of reckless genius. Micro-torpedoes, low yield. Target the fissures, could chain react, but it'll light us up like a beacon. He patched the schematics to Voss's station, fingers flying to calibrate the firing solution. Voss glanced at it, then at Reyes for the nod. Risky. If it backfires, we're debris too. Do it, Reyes said, his tone brooking no argument. Or we die running. The torpedoes whispered out, burrowing into the heart of a massive, pockmarked rock. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the detonation rippled through, cracked spiderwebbing in brilliant white. The asteroid shattered, a storm of shards erupting like shrapnel from a cosmic shotgun. The Crick scouts veered wildly. One impaled itself on a spear of stone, the other vanishing in a fireball as fragments pummeled its hull. Silence fell on the bridge, broken only by the creak of settling bulkheads. Voss exhaled, easing off the throttles as they cleared the expanding debris cloud. Clear for now. But that stunt? It'll draw every Crix in the system. Reyes stood clapping Hale on the shoulder, a rare gesture from the stoic captain. Bought us breathing room. Plot insertion to the inner belt. We need to link up with the fleet remnants before the real swarm hits. His gaze drifted to the stars, where Earth's distant glow flickered with the fires of invasion. The cost was mounting, one shattered rock at a time. Deeper in the field, shadows stirred. More Crick signatures blooming on the sensors like malignant stars. The game of hide-and-seek had just begun in earnest. Hale's fingers danced across the console, pulling up a holographic map of the asteroid belt. The display flickered, dotted with red blips. Crick's drones probing the shadows like hungry insects. Insertion point Bravo 7, Captain. Tight squeeze between those two big rocks, but it'll mask our signature. Reyes nodded, his jaw set. Do it, Voss, ease us in slow. No thruster burst till we're committed. The ship groaned as Voss complied, nudging the battered frigate toward the gap. Hale watched the proximity alerts climb, heart steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. He'd flown worse runs in sims back on the Academy Rock, but this was real. Earth's defense hinging on scraps like them linking up with whatever fleet was left. A low rumble vibrated through the deck. Not the engines. Something else. Sensors picking up interference, Hale said, voice clipped. Electromagnetic pulse from the asteroids? No, wait, that's no natural echo. Voss glanced back, eyes narrowing. Crick's jamming net. They're hurting us. Reyes straightened, hand on the comms panel. All hands brace. Hale, find us a blind spot. Voss, prep evasive if they light us up. The corridor outside the bridge hummed with activity, engineers scrambling to reroute power, their boots thudding against the grated floor. Hale zoomed the hollow, spotting a cluster of metallic debris from the earlier skirmish. There, old mining rig wreckage. We slingshot through it, scatter their lock. Voss grinned faintly, the first crack in her focus. Crazy enough to work. Punch it? Do it, Reyes ordered. The ship lurched as Voss fired a microburst, slinging them into the debris field. Shards pinged off the hull like hail on tin. But the Crick signatures blurred, their targeting faltering in the metallic soup. Hale exhaled, wiping his forehead. But the relief was short-lived. A new alert screamed. Proximity warning, closing fast. Got company, Voss muttered. 2 drones flanking from starboard. Reyes leaned over Hale's shoulder, studying the feed. They're cutting us off from the rendezvous. We can't shake them clean in this soup. Hale's mind raced, tracing vectors in his head. The mining rig, half buried in the next asteroid, its drills still humming from residual power. Captain, what if we use it? Overload the rig's core, trigger a cascade. Flow the drones without lighting up the whole belt. Reyes paused, weighing it. The risk was high. One wrong nudge, and they'd be debris themselves. But the alternative was facing the swarm alone. Make it happen. Voss, line us up. Hale, remote hack the rig's controls. Hale patched into the external array, fingers flying through the firewall. The Crick's drones closed in, their laser sights painting faint lines across the view screen. Sweat stung his eyes, but he pushed through, injecting a surge into the rig's outdated systems. The asteroid ahead shuddered. A brilliant flash erupted as the core destabilized, chain reacting through the debris. The drones vaporized in the bloom, shrapnel whipping past the frigate's shields. Voss whooped, pulling them clear. Clear skies, boys. That was poetry. Reyes clapped Hale's back again, firmer this time. Good call. But we've burned our stealth. Fleet remnants better be worth the noise. As they cleared the blast radius, the sensors lit up with friendlies. 3 battered corvettes holding position behind a moonlet. Hale patched the comms. "This is the Vanguard. We've got your 6. A gravelly voice crackled back. Commander Ellis from the old Orion wing. "About time, Vanguard. Swarms inbound. Dock and sink. We've got a plan that'll make those bugs wish they'd stayed home." The bridge fell quiet, the weight of Alliance settling in. But Hale caught Reyes's glance at the main view screen, where the Crick signatures multiplied like storm clouds. One win didn't end the hunt. Hale gripped the docking clamps as the Vanguard shuddered into alignment with Ellis's corvette. Magnetic seals hissing, locking them tight. Through the viewport he saw flashes of welding torches from the other ships, jury-rigged repairs under fire. "Boarding tube secure," Reyes reported, her voice steady over the intercom. "But those Crick signatures are closing fast. 8 to 10 minutes. Hale nodded, though she couldn't see it. He turned to Voss, their tactical officer, who was already hauling a crate of power cells toward the tube. "Gear up. Ellis says sync means sharing everything, schematics, firepower, the works." Voss grunted, sweat beading on her brow despite the chill. "If their plan's half as solid as their hulls look, we're golden. Mine's leaking plasma like a sieve." The tube extended with a metallic groan and Hale led the way across, boots clanging on the grated floor. The corvette's airlock cycled open to reveal Commander Ellis, tall, scarred, with eyes like chipped flint, flanked by 2 of his crew. No salutes. Just a firm handshake that crushed Hale's fingers. "Captain Reyes," Ellis said, voice rough as gravel. "Heard you turned that frigate into scrap. Impressive. But we're not out of the woods. Swarm's got numbers we can't match head-on." They moved to the corvette's cramped briefing room, where holographic displays flickered with red blips. Hundreds of Crick's drones vectoring in from the asteroid field. Reyes and Voss filed in behind, joining Ellis's officers. A wiry tactics specialist named Patel, and a burly gunner, Tomas. Ellis tapped the holo, zooming on a cluster of moonlets. "Cricks are funneling through here, using the rocks for cover. Their alpha ship, Big Bastard calls the shots, is hanging back, coordinating. Our play. Hit the drones first, force the alpha to commit. But we need a bait." Hale leaned in, tracing a path with his finger. "Vanguard can play decoy. We've got the maneuverability left after that burn. Draw them into the open, let your corvettes flank." Patel shook his head, lips thin. "Risky. One wrong twitch and you're bug food. Why not cluster fire from cover?" "Because cover's what they're expecting." Reyes cut in, her tone sharp but measured. "We burned stealth getting here, might as well go loud." "Hale's right. Make them chase." Ellis eyed Hale, then nodded. "Agreed. Sync your nav data now. We'll ripple the drones. Vanguard leads, we follow and wedge. Voss, your team's on overload protocols. Push those rails to the limit." Voss cracked her knuckles. "Already rerouting power. But if we overload, it's 1 shot per gun before meltdown." The plan locked in, urgency humming through the room like a live wire. Hale felt the deck vibrate as the corvette's powered engines undocking in sequence. Back on the Vanguard, he strapped into the command chair. Reyes at weapons, Voss below decks. "Swarm splitting," Reyes said, fingers flying over controls. 50+ vectors locking on. Hale punched the thrusters. "Evasive pattern, Delta. Draw 'em out, make it look desperate." The Vanguard surged forward, weaving through debris. Crick's drones peeled off the main group, chitinous hulls glinting as they accelerated, plasma lances charging with eerie green glows. A near miss scorched the shields, alarms blaring. "Shields at 60%, Reyes snapped. "They're herding us toward the Alpha's blind spot." Hale grinned fiercely, sweat stinging his eyes. "Good, that's the point." But as they broke clear of the moonlets, a new signature bloomed on sensors. A Crick's interceptor squadron cutting off their flank. Ellis's voice crackled over comms. "Ambush!" Pulling back to regroup. "Hold them!" Hale's stomach dropped. The plan was fracturing already. Reyes full barrage. Buy us time. She unleashed the rails, blue streaks tearing into the drones. 3 crumpled, venting atmosphere, but more swarmed in, their fire peppering the hull. A direct hit rocked the bridge, sparks flying from a console. Voss's voice boomed from engineering. "Hull breach in Bay 2. Sealing it, gimme 30 seconds. Hale wrestled the controls, dodging a lance that vaporized a chunk of armor. The Alpha ship loomed distant, its tendrils deploying reinforcements. They were exposed, the corvettes too far to cover. "Ellis, we can't hold." Hale barked into the comm. "Improvise, Captain. That's what you humans do best." Reyes glanced at him, eyes fierce. Vent the auxiliary tanks, fake a power surge. It'll look like we're crippled, pull the interceptors in close. Hale hesitated a beat, then slammed the override. Do it! Explosive decompression billowed from the Vanguard's side, debris clouding sensors. The Cricks hesitated, then dove in, sensing weakness. Hale counted heartbeats, then ignited the emergency thrusters in a wild spin. Now, Reyes, point blank. Railguns roared at zero range, shredding the lead interceptors. Wreckage bloomed like fireworks, buying the precious seconds. Ellis's corvettes looped back, their combined fire ripping through the swarm's edge. But the cost hit hard. Voss reported over comms, voice strained. A2's gone, lost 2 crew in the vent. We're flying on fumes. Hale steadied the ship, the Alpha's signatures faltering as it recalled forces. One skirmish won, but the war's teeth were bared. Hale gripped the command console as the Vanguard shuddered back to stability, the Alpha ship's recall order scattering the remaining Cricks interceptors like startled insects. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, but his focus locked on the main holoscreen, where the alien flagship loomed larger now, its jagged hull pulsing with the faint glow of charging weapons arrays. Rhea's status on the rails? Hale barked, wiping sweat from his brow. Overloaded but holding, Captain. 5 shots left before we melt the coils. Reyes's voice crackled over the internal comm, steady despite the tremor Hale could hear beneath it. Ellis's Corvette squadron reformed on the tactical overlay, their icons blinking in tight formation. We've got your flank, Vanguard. But that big bastard's venting plasma. Looks like we clipped something vital. Permission to press? Hale nodded to himself, calculating vectors in his head. The Alpha had pulled back to regroup, but its escorts were already peeling off new vectors, aiming to encircle the human flotilla. Resource shortage gnawed at them, ammo reserves dipping low, fuel cells straining from the evasive spins. One wrong push and they'd be adrift in the void. Negative, Ellis, fall back to the debris field. Use the wreckage for cover. We improvise a chaff wall. Hale's fingers danced over the controls, rerouting power from life support to the maneuvering thrusters. The ship groaned in protest, air recyclers slowing to a whisper, but the Vanguard lurched toward the expanding cloud of twisted metal from the destroyed interceptors. Voss's face appeared in the corner of Hale's HUD, pale but eyes sharp. Engineering's rerouting what we can, sir. But if we keep this up, we'll be breathing vacuum in an hour. Crew's asking for evac protocols. Tell them to hold the line, Hale said, his voice low and firm. We've got a shot at their command node if we blind them first. The Vanguard plunged into the debris, shards of alien alloy pinging off the hull like hail. Reyes fired a probing shot, the railgun's whine building to a thunderous release. The slug tore through the cloud, slamming into an escort frigate's sensor array. Sparks erupted across its bow, momentarily blacking out its targeting locks. Ellis's voice cut in, terse and urgent. Copy that, deploying decoys. Voss, sync our ECM burst with the Vanguard. Let's make 'em chase ghosts. Voss patched through from below decks, her team scrambling with jury-rigged cables snaking across the engineering bay. ECM online, firing in 3, 2. The combined electronic warfare pulse rippled out, an invisible net of interference that scrambled the Cricks' pursuit signatures. On the holoscreen, enemy icons flickered, veering toward phantom targets amid the debris. Hale allowed himself a tight smile, the human edge and asymmetric tricks turning scrap into shields. But the Alpha adapted faster than expected. Its massive form pivoted, unleashing a barrage of plasma lances that sliced through the chaff wall. One beam grazed the Vanguard's dorsal fin, shearing off a sensor pod in a burst of molten debris. The ship bucked violently, red lights flooding the bridge. Damage report, Hale shouted, steadying against the inertial dampener's lag. Fins compromised, maneuverability down 20%. Reyes replied, already compensating with auxiliary jets. Ellis's lead corvette took a hit. They're venting atmo. Hale's gut twisted. The war's teeth indeed biting deeper now. He keyed the fleet channel. Ellis, break off and plug that leak. Vanguard is going lone wolf straight for the Alpha's bridge. A pause, then Ellis's grim affirmation. Understood, Captain. Give 'em hell for us. The Vanguard accelerated, weaving through the fading interference. Hale overrode safeties, pushing engines to redline, the deck plates humming with strain. Voss's warning pinged. Structural integrity at 75%. One more hit like that and we're done. They closed the gap, the Alpha filling the viewport like a predatory shadow. Reyes lined up the kill shot. but the alien ship unleashed point defense drones swarming to intercept. Hale slammed the collision alarm, initiating a desperate barrel roll that flung loose tools across the bridge. Drones inbound, evasive. Reyes yelled, fingers blurring on controls. Hale yanked the stick, the Vanguard spinning wildly. A drone detonated against the hull, the shockwave rattling teeth. Another clipped the wing, but they broke through, Reyes unleashing the penultimate railgun round. It punched into the Alpha's forward shielding, cracking the energy field in a cascade of fracturing light. The alien bridge erupted in secondary explosions visible even from afar. The Alpha listed, its pursuit faltering as internal fires bloomed. But retaliation came swift. A final plasma arc lanced out, carving a gash along the Vanguard's belly. Alarm screamed. Voss's voice broke through the chaos. Hull breach in cargo hold 3. Sealing it now, but we've lost pressure in sections 4 and 5. Casualties mounting. Hale brought the ship about, the Alpha's wreckage drifting silently now, a hollow victory amid the stars. Ellis's surviving corvettes rendezvoused, towing the wounded lead ship. The fleet hung together, battered but unbroken as distant Crick's reinforcements blinked on sensors. We held, Hale murmured to the empty bridge, the weight of the cost settling like debris in his chest. But they're coming harder. Hale gripped the armrests, the bridge lights flickering like a dying heartbeat as the Crick's reinforcements closed in. 3 jagged silhouettes on the tactical display, their hulls pulsing with that eerie green energy signature. Hunters, not the lumbering Alphas, built for speed and surgical strikes. The Vanguard groaned under partial power, auxiliary thrusters whining to compensate for the breached sections. Status on repairs? Hale barked, eyes locked on the holoscreen where Ellis's corvettes formed a ragged picket line. Voss's face appeared on the comms panel, streaked with grime and sweat, her voice steady despite the sparks flying behind her in engineering. Patching the hull, but it's patchwork at best. We've got Atmo in most compartments, but weapons are down to 30%. Railguns offline. Only the point defense lasers spinning up. One of the Crick's hunters peeled off, accelerating toward the wounded corvette on their flank. Ellis's voice cut in, terse and edged with strain. They're probing us. If we scatter, they pick us off one by one. Hale, we need to bunch up, use the Vanguard as bait. Hale nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. The Vanguard was a sitting duck, her engines coughing plasma like an old smoker, but scattering meant death in detail. Form on me. Tight diamond formation. Voss, reroute everything to forward shields. Ellis, your birds cover the flanks. Hit them with chaff if they get too close. The fleet maneuvered, a desperate shuffle of battered ships knitting together. The lead hunter lunged, its forward array blooming with targeting locks. Alarms wailed as micro-missiles streaked out. A glittering swarm aimed at the Vanguard's exposed belly. Evade! Hale slammed the controls, the ship lurching sideways on a burst of attitude jets. Missiles detonated in their wake, shockwaves rattling the hull. But one clipped the edge. A secondary explosion blooming in the cargo hold, sealing bulkheads hissing shut. Casualties again. Hale's jaw tightened. Voss, talk to me. Lost 2 in the hold, she replied, her tone flat, professional. But we're venting the fire. Give me 2 minutes for the countermeasures. The hunter circled back, joined by its pair, their formations tightening like wolves on a limping herd. Ellis's corvette fired a salvo, lasers carving glowing scars across the alien's flank, but it shrugged them off, retaliating with a lance of particle fire that vaporized one of her point defense turrets. They're adapting, Ellis growled over the link. Shields modulating to our frequency. We can't punch through like this. Hale scanned the readouts, mind racing. The Crick's tech was alien, sure, but patterns emerged. Energy flows, weak points in their pursuit vectors. Humans had faced worse odds on dirtier worlds. Voss, can we spoof their sensors? Use the debris field from the Alpha? A pause, then her eyes lit up on the feed. The wreckage? It's got residual plasma signatures. Could mask us if we vent our own exhaust in a pattern. Risky, though. Might overload the seals. Do it, Hale said. Ellis, faint left, draw them in. We'll play dead in the cloud. The plan snapped into motion. Ellis's ships broke formation, peeling away with erratic thrusts, baiting the hunters into the expanding debris plume from the Alpha's corpse. The Vanguard drifted, engines cold. Voss's improvised vent pulsing faint, mimicking the cooling hulk. The hunters dove in, sensors pinging wildly amid the ionized fog. Hale held his breath, watching as one overshot entangled in twisted metal. Ellis struck then, corvettes unleashing a coordinated barrage, torpedoes slipping through the confusion to bury into the hunter's core. It erupted in a silent fireball, shrapnel peppering the void. The second hunter veered, but too late. The Vanguard surged to life, her lasers recalibrated by Voss on the fly, lancing through the unmasked shields. The alien ship listed, engines flaring out. But as it died, a final transmission burst from it. A distress beacon Hale knew summoning more. The fleet regrouped, breaths ragged over the comms. "We bought time," Hale said, "but not much. Patch what you can." "They're not done." Voss wiped her brow, a grim smile cracking through. "Neither are we." Hale's fingers tightened on the command rail as the Vanguard shuddered under auxiliary power. The bridge lights flickered, casting long shadows across Voss's console where she hunched, rerouting what energy she could from the battered engines. Ellis paced the narrow deck, his boots clanging against the grate, eyes locked on the tactical display where red blips multiplied like sparks from a dying star. "Distress signals looping," Ellis muttered, halting to jab a finger at the screen. "They're calling in the cavalry. 3 signatures inbound, heavy cruisers by the look of their drive signatures." Voss didn't look up, her hands dancing over the patched interface. "Shields at 30%. We've got patchwork plating holding the hull, but one good hit and we're venting atmosphere." She paused, sweat beading on her forehead, and flipped a switch. A low hum built, the ship's recyclers whining back to life. "Life support stabilizing. We can breathe at least." Hale nodded, forcing his voice steady. "Prioritize weapons. Ellis, get the corvettes in a wedge formation. Flank them as they drop out of warp." He glanced at the viewport, the ionized fog swirling like ghosts around debris from the fallen hunter. The void felt heavier now, pressing in with the weight of what was coming. No time for doubt. The crew needed him solid. The comms crackled to life with responses from the wing leaders, terse acknowledgments cutting through the static. Ellis relayed the orders, his usual wit clipped short by the urgency. "Copy that, Captain. Vipers, form up on my mark." He strapped into the tack station, pulling up firing solutions that scrolled like frantic code. Voss leaned back, rubbing her eyes. "Lasers are hot, but torpedoes are down to 6 across the fleet. We improvise or we die pretty." Her voice carried that edge, cautious but unyielding, the engineer who fixed miracles with spit and sarcasm. The first cruiser materialized in a ripple of warped space, its angular hull gleaming under the distant sun's glare, weapons ports already glowing. Hale's heart pounded as the alarms blared. "Evasive, all ships, engage." The Vanguard lurched as Ellis fired the maneuvering thrusters, dodging the opening salvo that lit the fog in brilliant streaks. Voss cursed under her breath, her fingers flying to counter the incoming fire, shields flaring blue as they absorbed the brunt. But the second cruiser joined the fray, its beam slicing through a corvette's flank. The small ship spun wild, trailing plasma before exploding in a brief, silent bloom. "Lost Viper 3, Ellis reported, his jaw set. "They're coordinating, pinning us against the debris field." Hale gripped the rail harder, mind racing. The aliens' tactics were textbook. Overwhelm with firepower, exploit the chaos. But humans didn't break that way. "Voss, can we vent the cargo bays? Use the fog as cover. Draw them in close." She blinked, then grinned fiercely despite the strain. "Risky. It'll blind our sensors too, but yeah. Give me 30 seconds. Her hands blurred again, seals hissing open on the schematic. Ellis shot Hale a look, wary but trusting. "If it works, we turn their numbers against them. If not..." He trailed off, cueing the fleet-wide broadcast. "All hands, prep for zero-vis. Follow the Vanguard in." The bays vented, spewing stored gases and particulates into the void, thickening the fog into an opaque shroud. The cruiser's fire probed blindly now, their precise strikes turning erratic. Hale felt the deck tilt as they dove into the murk, the viewport going hazy white. "Contacts closing," Voss said, her voice tight. 200 clicks and narrowing." Hale's pulse thrummed. This was it, the gamble. Ellis, target their engines. Loose torpedoes on my go. The third cruiser burst through the edge of the cloud, too eager, its shields flickering as it hunted. Ellis's fingers hovered. "Locked. Now," Hale barked. Torpedoes streaked out, guided by Voss's hasty overrides, homing on heat signatures amid the interference. One cruiser took a direct hit, its drive erupting in a chain reaction that rippled through the fog. But the other two adapted fast, their point defenses chewing through the barrage. A lucky shot grazed the Vanguard, buckling a bulkhead with a groan of metal. Alarms wailed, hull breach in engineering. Voss bolted from her station, grabbing a sealant kit.
I've got it. Keep them off us!
Ellis fired the lasers in controlled bursts, scoring the nearest hull, but the return fire hammered their flanks. Another corvette vanished from the display, its pilot's final curse echoing over comms. Hale swallowed the bile rising in his throat. They were losing ground, the fog's advantage fading as the aliens adjusted. Pull back, regroup on the debris line. But as they withdrew, the wounded cruiser limped after, its beacon still pulsing reinforcements. Hale stared at the screen, the cost etching deeper. 2 ships gone, crew with them. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning to hurt. Hale gripped the armrests as the Vanguard shuddered again, the alien cruiser's plasma arcs slicing through the void like hungry claws. Ellis, evasive pattern Delta, now! His voice cut sharp over the din of straining engines. Ellis's fingers danced across the console, sweat beading on his brow. On it, Captain. But they're predicting our moves. That fog's thinning out there. The ship lurched left, dodging a volley that scorched their shields to half strength. Voss's sealant foam hissed somewhere below, patching the breach, but the acrid smell of melting circuits clawed up through the vents. Status on reinforcements? Hale demanded, eyes locked on the tactical display where red blips swarmed like angry wasps. 8 to 5 minutes, Ellis replied, his usual wit edged with grit. If we last that long. Voss, you sealed? A grunt echoed from the intercom. Barely. Hull's holding, but engineering's a mess. One more hit like that and we're venting atmo. The aliens pressed harder, their corvettes fanning out to flank. Hale watched another human fighter wink off the grid. Lieutenant Patel, his last transmission a defiant burst of static. The cost piled up, each loss a knife twist in his gut. He couldn't afford hesitation. Voss, reroute auxiliary power to forward batteries. Ellis, lock onto their command node. We're not pulling back this time. Ellis hesitated, just a beat. That's suicide range, sir. They'll shred us. Better than dying slow. Hale's jaw set. He'd seen too many retreats turn to routes. This was grit now. Pure human stubbornness against the swarm. Down in engineering, Voss wiped grime from her face. Her hands trembling as she yanked a conduit free. Sparks flew, illuminating the twisted bulkhead like fleeting stars. She wasn't a fighter like the others, cautious by nature, always the one patching wounds after the storm. But Hale's order lit a fire. Rerouting power meant exposing herself to overload, but the alternative was watching her crewmates evaporate into space. Power shifting, she called up, voice steady despite the fear gnawing her edges. Batteries hot and 30. The Vanguard surged forward, engines roaring defiance. Alien fire raked their hull, alarms screaming as shields flickered. Ellis fired first, lasers carving a glowing scar across the cruiser's underbelly. It reeled, but retaliated with a beam that punched through their port side, shearing off a sensor array in a burst of debris. Hale braced as the deck tilted violently. Hold course! Voss, overload imminent! Her shout crackled through static. In the dim glow of consoles, she jammed the reroute, sparks biting her gloves. Power flooded the batteries, but feedback surged back, frying secondary systems. Lights dimmed shipwide, the hum of life support stuttering. Ellis whooped despite the chaos. Hit! Their nodes sparking, but the cruiser didn't falter. It loosed a full barrage, plasma blooms erupting across their bow. The Vanguard bucked, a bulkhead groaning in protest. Hale tasted blood from a split lip, the bridge console sparking inches from his face. They were blind now, sensors half gone, but the aliens closed in, victory scenting their advance. Captain, we can't, Ellis started, but Hale cut him off. We adapt. Voss, vent the fog reserves, disrupt their sensors. It was a wild swing, using the nebula's own haze against them, but humans didn't win by playing fair. From below, Voss acted without question, her cautious heart pounding as she triggered the vents. Gray tendrils billowed from the Vanguard's hull, swirling into the fray like a shroud. The alien formation hesitated, their precise locks fracturing in the murk. Hale leaned forward, eyes fierce. Now Ellis, full barrage. Lasers lanced through the fog, unseen strikes that hammered the cruiser's node. Explosions rippled across its frame, hull plates peeling back in fiery protest. The corvettes scattered, caught off guard, one colliding with debris in the confusion. But victory came laced with cost. The Vanguard listed power reserves critically low, Voss's voice faint over comms. I'm hurt, but we're stable. Hale nodded to himself, the bridge a haze of smoke and resolve. The aliens retreated, their beacon dimming, but the void stretched empty around them. Too many ghosts now. Reinforcements arrived in a thunder of engines, docking clamps locking with urgent clangs. Hale stood as medics swarmed, ignoring the ache in his ribs. They'd bought time, turned the tide with scrap and sweat, but the invasion shadow loomed larger. Eradication Omega wasn't won yet. It was just getting personal. Hale gripped the armrest as the medbay doors hissed open, the sterile hum of scanners cutting through the fog in his head. Reinforcements had flooded the Vanguard like a lifeline, their engineers patching hull breaches with hasty welds while fresh Marines stomped through the corridors, barking orders in clipped accents from the core worlds. He waved off the attending medic's syringe, eyes fixed on the holoscreen flickering with incoming data. The aliens' fleet had pulled back, but sensor ghosts lingered. Probes, maybe, or worse, cloaked scouts testing their resolve. Voss lay on the adjacent bunk, her arm in a cryo-sling, face pale but set with that stubborn grit Hale had come to rely on. She'd taken shrapnel to the shoulder during the corvette's desperate strafing run, saving the bridge crew from a direct hit. "Captain," she rasped, pushing herself up despite the nurse's protest. "Fleet Command's calling. They want a debrief and they're not asking nicely." He nodded, swinging his legs off the bed. The ache in his ribs pulsed with every breath, a reminder of the bulkhead that had clipped him when the Vanguard shuddered under fire. No time for weakness. "Patch me through here. And Voss, stay put. That's an order." She smirked faintly, wincing as she adjusted the sling. Orders from a man who just ignored his own medic? Bold. The holoscreen stabilized, projecting Admiral Ellis's stern visage, his uniform crisp against the backdrop of the command carrier's bridge. Flanking him were two others. Lieutenant Reyes, the tactical officer Hale had sparred with during Sims back at the academy, her dark eyes sharp and unyielding, and Dr. Thomas Kane, the xenobiologist whose reports on alien physiology had turned the tide in their last skirmish. Small team, tight-knit. Ellis's way of keeping things personal amid the chaos. "Captain Hale," Ellis began, voice gravelly over the static. "Your stunt with the Vanguard bought us a window, but it's closing fast. Alien signatures are massing at the Lagrange point. Looks like they're prepping a hammer blow. Eradication Omega demands we hit them first." Hale leaned forward, the medbay's lights casting harsh shadows on his bruised face. "Our reserves are scrap, Admiral. Voss is down, engines are limping. What's the play?" Reyes interjected, her fingers dancing over an off-screen console. "We improvise, like always. Human specialty. I've got schematics for a jury-rigged EMP pulse, using your debris field as a conductor. It'll blind their sensors long enough for a boarding team to plant charges on that beacon ship." Kane shook his head, his voice measured but urgent. "Risky. Their biology adapts quick. Last autopsies showed neural redundancies. If the pulse fails, we're inviting them aboard." The group fell into a tense rhythm, ideas bouncing like live rounds. Hale sketched a rough vector on the bedside tablet, tracing a slingshot maneuver around the asteroid belt to mask their approach. Voss, ignoring her sling, propped herself higher and pointed at a weak point in Reyes's schematic. "There. Reroute the auxiliary power through the salvaged alien tech we scraped up. It'll amplify the pulse without frying our own grids." Ellis's eyes narrowed, appraising. "Feasible?" Hale met his gaze. "If we pull it off, yes. But it means splitting the team. Reyes leads the boarders, Kane handles biocontainment, Voss and I run interference from the Vanguard." A beat of silence. Then Ellis nodded. "Make it count. Launch in 2 hours." As the feed cut, Hale exhaled, the weight settling heavier. Voss caught his eye, her expression fierce despite the pain. "We're not just surviving this, Captain. We're ending it." He clasped her good shoulder, the resolve stealing in his chest. Outside, the void waited. But for the first time since the invasion ignited, victory felt within grasp. Not handed down, but forged in the fire of their choices. Hale gripped the console as the Vanguard shuddered into motion, thrusters firing in staccato bursts against the asteroid's pull. Voss's fingers flew across the auxiliary panel, rerouting power to the makeshift amplifier jury-rigged from the salvaged alien core. "Shields at 80%, she reported, her voice steady despite the fresh bandages wrapping her arm. "That pulse we scraped together, it's humming. But if the boarders don't sync it right, we're ghosts in the debris field." He nodded, eyes locked on the viewport where the alien mothership loomed like a jagged scar against the stars. Reyes's team was already away in the drop pods, silent arrows cutting toward the enemy's underbelly. Kane's bio unit trailed them, a bulbous containment drone bristling with neural dampeners to handle whatever horrors the Xenos had cooked up inside. "Stay sharp." Hale transmitted to the away team. Ellis is counting on this. We hit them where it hurts, their command nexus. Static crackled back from Reyes. Copy, Captain. Boarding in 30. These bugs won't know what hit them. Her tone carried that wiry edge, the kind that came from too many close calls, but Hale heard the undercurrent of doubt. The alien tech was a gamble. One wrong frequency, and it could chain react through their own systems like a virus. The Vanguard banked hard, evading a scatter of defensive drones that swarmed from the mothership's flanks. Voss unleashed a barrage of chaff, the countermeasures blooming into a glittering fog that confused the incoming fire. Explosions lit the void in sharp flares, one pod shearing off course but recovering with a desperate spin. Hale's jaw tightened. Kane's status on containment? Locked and loaded, came the gravelly reply. But their bioshields are adapting faster than projected. We're punching through, but it's gonna be messy. Voss glanced at Hale, her dark eyes reflecting the console's glow. Reyes is in. Visual confirms hull breach. On the screen, grainy feed showed the team spilling into the alien corridors, twisted metal veins pulsing with bioluminescent fluid. Reyes moved like a shadow, her squad fanning out with pulse rifles humming low. Then the first snag hit. Alarms blared as the amplifier spiked, feedback looping through the Vanguard's grid. Sparks danced across the panels and Hale smelled the acrid bite of overheating circuits. Shut it down, he barked, slamming the emergency override. Voss complied, but not before the ship lurched, inertial dampeners whining in protest. Captain, the core's destabilizing, she said, sweat beading on her forehead. We pushed it too hard. If we don't recalibrate, the pulse won't propagate, it'll fizzle out. Hale leaned in, scanning the diagnostics. The alien artifact's lattice was fracturing under the strain, its exotic alloys rejecting the human overlay like a body fighting an infection. Outside, the mothership's guns swiveled, tracking them with predatory precision. A near miss rocked the hull, sending tools skittering across the deck. Adapt or die, he muttered, pulling up the schematics. Human ingenuity, that's what Ellis had banked on. No elegant solutions here, just grit and whatever scraps they had. Voss vent the auxiliary coolant lines into the core housing. It'll flash freeze the lattice and stabilize it long enough for the boarders to link up. Her hands paused. That'll ice over half our sensors. Blind in the fight. Better blind and fighting than dead and precise. He met her gaze, the decision hanging between them like shrapnel. She exhaled sharply and executed the command. Frost spiderwebbed across the inner bulkheads as cryogenic mist flooded the compartment. The amplifier's whine dropping to a steady thrum. The Vanguard went dark in patches, stars blurring through frosted viewports, but the pulse held. Amplified. Hungry. Reyes's voice cut through the comms, urgent now. Nexus in sight, but they've got guardians. Swarms of those blade-limbed drones. Kane's containment is holding, but we're taking hits. Need that pulse now, Hale? 10 seconds, he replied, fingers white on the controls. Voss fired evasive thrusters, the ship twisting through a hail of plasma. One drone clipped their wing, shearing off a sensor array in a burst of sparks. Pain lanced through Hale's side where an old wound reopened, but he ignored it, focusing on the sync beacon. The pulse fired. A silent wave rippling outward, invisible but for the way it warped the enemy shields like heat haze. On the feed, the boarders pressed forward, the Nexus core exposed and vulnerable. Drones faltered mid-leap, their carapaces cracking from the overload. But victory came with teeth. Kane's drone breached, a grotesque flood of alien biomass spilling into the corridors before the dampener sealed it. Lost 2, Reyes reported flatly. But we're wiring the core. Omega sequence initiating. Hale watched the mothership convulse, secondary explosions blooming along its spine. The Vanguard limped clear, frost cracking on the hull as systems rebooted unevenly. Voss slumped back, a grim smile tugging at her lips. We did it. But Ellis? He'll want a full debrief on the losses. The void receded slightly. The immediate threat shattered. Yet the stars held no promises. Hale straightened, the weight of command settling anew. Survival wasn't clean. It was carved from the bone. Hale gripped the armrest as the Vanguard shuddered, the emergency klaxons cutting through the haze of recycled air like knives. Alarms blared from the tactical display, red icons pulsing where the alien mothership's debris field expanded, chunks of chitinous hull tumbling end over end into the void. Status on the core breach? He barked, eyes locked on Voss's screen. She wiped sweat from her brow, fingers flying across the patched console. Sealed for now, but the biomass is adapting, it's trying to worm through the vents. Kane's drone bought us minutes, not hours. Her voice held steady, the cautious edge sharpened by fatigue, but she didn't falter, rerouting power with a flick that dimmed the overhead lights. Reyes leaned over the nav station, her wiry frame tense, the scar on her cheek pulling tight as she scowled at the readings. Incoming signatures. 3 scout pods breaking from the debris. They're flanking us, Hale. If we don't maneuver, they'll punch through our shields before Ellis's fleet arrives. She slammed a fist on the panel, the impact echoing in the cramped bridge, her brave streak pushing her to act even as doubt flickered in her eyes. Hale nodded, the weight of the lost crew, 2 engineers vaporized in the breach, settling like lead in his gut. No time for grief. Evasive pattern delta. Divert auxiliary thrusters to port side. Voss, isolate those vents. Flood them with coolant if you have to. The ship groaned in response. Inertial dampeners whining as it banked hard, stars streaking across the viewport like accusatory streaks. The first scout pod locked on, its energy lance grazing the Vanguard's flank, sending sparks dancing across the bulkhead. Reyes cursed under her breath, twisting the controls with gritty determination. They're faster than we thought, alien techs evolving mid-fight. She fired a burst from the railguns, the recoil vibrating through the deck, but the pod jinked aside, its carapace shimmering with adaptive plating. Voss's plan hit a snag. The biomass surged against the seals, a wet, pulsing mass visible on the internal cams, tendrils probing like living wires. Coolant's not enough, it's absorbing the freeze. We need something hotter. Her wit surfaced in the crisis, a spark amid the dread. Remember that plasma rig from the engineering bay? The one we jury-rigged for welding? Hale's mind raced, piecing it together. Human grit, not flawless tech. Reyes, you're on it. Breach the bay, hook it to the vent lines. Overload if necessary. Reyes bolted from her station without a word, her boots pounding down the corridor, the door hissing shut behind her like a final breath. Tension coiled as the second pod closed in, its lance charging with a high whine that penetrated the hull. Hale watched Voss improvise, splicing auxiliary lines to boost the shields. Her hands steady despite the ship's lurching. The Vanguard twisted, dodging the shot by a hair's breadth. But the near miss rattled the frame, loose panels clattering. From the comms, Reyes's voice crackled through static. Rerouting now, plasma's flowing. Biomass is frying. Smells like burnt seafood in here. A muffled sizzle echoed faintly, followed by her grunt of effort, the sound of panels slamming into place. The third pod fired wild, its beam carving a scar across the Vanguard's dorsal fin. Systems flickering as secondary alarms wailed. Hale braced, the bridge tilting sharply. Hold course. Ellis is 2 minutes out. But the scouts pressed, their formation tightening, a desperate bid to finish what the mothership started. Then Reyes's fix kicked in. The vents erupted internally, plasma jets scorching the alien growth, black smoke billowing on the cams as the biomass recoiled, charred remnants sloughing away. Voss whooped softly, sealing the path. Clear. Core's holding. Outside, the scouts faltered, their coordination breaking as the Vanguard stabilized, railguns barking in retaliation. One pod shattered under concentrated fire, debris blooming like a dark flower. The others peeled off, engines flaring in retreat, just as Ellis's fleet crested the horizon. Sleek human destroyers, guns hot and ready. Hale exhaled, the bridge falling quiet save for the hum of repairing systems. Reyes staggered back in, face smeared with soot. A grim nod, her only report. The cost lingered. Hull breaches to patch, crew slots empty, the alien threat not eradicated but bloodied. They had carved another piece from the bone of survival. Captain Hale gripped the armrests of his command chair, the Vanguard's bridge thrumming with the low growl of engines pushing hard against the void. Ellis's fleet had closed the gap, their destroyers forming a wedge that sliced through the retreating alien pods like a knife through fog. But Hale's eyes locked on the main view screen, where the massive biomass entity, the heart of the invasion, pulsed in the distance, its tendrils regenerating faster than the railguns could burn them back. Status on the core breach? Hale barked, his voice cutting through the chatter. Voss's fingers flew across her console, sweat beading on her forehead. Sealed, but it's adapting. Those scouts weren't the real threat. They're buying time for the big one to spawn reinforcements. Reyes slumped against the bulkhead, wiping soot from her eyes. We lost engineering too. Jenkins and his team. They held the line until the bulkheads gave. Can't patch that without dry dock? The weight of it settled in Hale's gut. A cold knot that no amount of grit could loosen. They'd bought survival, but at what price? The alien horde wasn't beaten. It was regrouping, its organic mass swelling like a storm cloud on the scanners. Ellis's voice crackled over the comms, steady as ever. Vanguard, this is actual. We're locking weapons on the primary target. Your move. Initiate Omega if you're clear. Hale exchanged a glance with Voss, her cautious nod mirroring his resolve. They'd planned for this in the Sims, back when the invasion was just whispers from the outer colonies. Eradication sequence Omega. Not a brute force assault, but a surgical strike exploiting the biomass's one weakness. Its reliance on synchronized scout signals to coordinate regeneration. Copy that, Hale replied. Voss, sync the fleet's disruptors to our array. Reyes, get to the auxiliary bay. Manual override on the payload launchers. Reyes pushed off the wall, grim determination etching lines deeper into her face. On it, Cap. For Jenkins. As she dashed out, the bridge lights flickered under another salvo from the entity. A tendril lashed out, grazing a destroyer in Ellis's formation. The ship listed, sparks erupting from its hull before stabilizers kicked in. Voss's console beeped urgently. Disruptor link established, but the entity's modulating frequencies, it's learning our pattern. Hale leaned forward, mind racing. Brute force wouldn't cut it. The biomass had shrugged off worse. Human ingenuity, though, that was their edge. Reyes, stand by. We're going hybrid. In the auxiliary bay, Reyes wrestled with the launcher controls, the air thick with the acrid tang of melting circuits. The payload wasn't just missiles. It was a cascade of micro-drones, programmed to infiltrate and sever the entity's neural links from within. But the launch tubes were jammed from the earlier breach, shrapnel wedged like teeth in a trap. She pried at the panel, muscles straining, cursing under her breath. No time for finesse. With a grunt, she slammed her shoulder into the release lever, the metal groaning before giving way. Drones spilled into the tubes, humming to life. Payload ready, Reyes transmitted, voice tight. Fire when you— An alarm blared across the ship. The biomass had countered, its scouts reforming into a shield wall, absorbing the fleet's opening barrage. Ellis's destroyers fired again, but the shots scattered harmlessly, the entity's mass absorbing the energy like a sponge. On the bridge, Voss's face paled. They're jamming the sync. Drones won't penetrate without a clear vector. Hale's mind flashed to the Vanguard's underbelly, scarred from the initial assault. A risk, but the only one left. Ellis, peel back your wing. We're taking point, manual dive. You'll be exposed, Ellis warned, but there was no hesitation in his tone. Camaraderie forged in fire. Do it. Hale punched the coordinates into the nav console himself, overriding safeties. The Vanguard shuddered as thrusters fired, plunging toward the entity's core. Alarms wailed, crew bracing as the ship twisted through a hail of debris. Reyes felt the lurch in the bay, strapping into the manual fire station. Cap, this is suicide if the drones miss. Won't miss, Hale shot back. On my mark. The view screen filled with the biomass's maw, a writhing vortex of flesh and void. Voss's disruptors hummed, carving a fleeting path. Hale's finger hovered over the launch key. Mark. Drones erupted from the Vanguard, a swarm of silver needles burrowing into the chaos. The entity recoiled, its pulses erratic as the micros latched onto nerve clusters, severing signals in a cascade of overloads. Scouts shattered mid-formation, coordination lost. The biomass convulsed, tendrils flailing wildly before contracting inward, imploding under its own failed regeneration. Ellis's fleet closed in, mopping up the remnants with precise, unrelenting fire. The void fell silent save for the Vanguard's labored hum. Hale exhaled, the bridge crew slumping in unison. Reyes staggered back aboard, nodding once. They'd won, but the empty stations whispered of the cost. Lives etched into the hull, a fleet forever scarred. Voss sealed the final logs. Invasion sequence terminated. Omega complete. In the quiet aftermath, Hale stared at the stars, defiant spark unbroken. Humanity endured.